Hi, welcome to Firstpost. I'm Rupha Ramani, and you're joining me in for a bit of a look back at what has been an absolutely momentous and historic World Test Championship final. Um, I'm just as emotional as many sport lovers, as many cricket lovers who are watching or have watched this final play out. It's just been 4 days, little more than 3.5 days. We're down to day four, and it's been a historic moment, particularly for South Africa and for cricket. This will go down in the history of the sport itself as one of those most iconic moments in world cricket. South Africa has beaten Australia today at the World Test Championship final. We're still in moments post that match concluding, with all the players coming out, really restrained emotions by many of them who've been part of what is clearly a defining moment in the history of South Africa cricket, and not just the sport itself, not the sport itself, but for South Africa as well as a nation, a seminal moment for them, because this goes beyond the sport itself. What this victory means for that country, for every single player, every single cricketer, every single sports person who's come through the ranks, who've come through decades of being associated with just good enough to get there, but not over the line. The kind of cruel history that kind of cruel relationship that South Africa, as a sporting nation, barring maybe rugby over the many years, has shared with the big moments, the big match moments, has utterly been painful to watch from the sidelines, because this has been a country that's really produced some magnificent talent, and a lot of them were gathered there at what is the home of cricket, as many believe. So this moment also being that much more iconic purely because of where it's taken place, how it's come about, the kind of emotions that you will see spill over the next few hours, going through the next few days. But we've got to be a little more structured here, and we will look back at what has been some of the most crucial moments of this test, and who were the different characters who played a very critical knock in making this one of the most memorable moments in the sporting history itself, and that of in the history of the sport and of cricket itself. I have to first off speak, of course, of the two players who really changed the tide, turned the tide, and made this a moment which South Africa could go on to achieve. It has to be Aiden, Markram, and Temba, Bavuma. It was their partnership on day three that really changed things and made South Africa as a country, the team, the squad, the fans who'd come there in big numbers, truly believe that this was going to happen, that the choker stag would finally be lifted from the shoulders. The burden that they have been carrying for so many years would be lifted. If not at the end of day three, then definitely on day four. And that's exactly what was a critical point. I've got to mention a few things here when we speak about someone like Aiden Markram. He's played a lot of, almost nearing 50 matches for South Africa in Test cricket, has scored 7 centuries. This one has to rate right up there. Has always been viewed as someone who's flattered to at many levels, but not really scaled that height when it actually has been those crunch moments. And he really stepped up here. And in fact, one very interesting point to note in this career defining and match defining moment knock of his, in 2014, the only other South African side to win an ICC title was the under-19 men's team. And only 2 people who were part of that winning side were present in this particular winning squad. And that's, of course, Kagiso Rabada, who's shown as well, and we'll come to his performance a little later in our chat here, but it was also Aiden Markram. Interesting to note that under-19 final was against Pakistan side. It was played in Dubai in 2014, and they lifted the title, and the highest scorer in that particular match was also Aiden Markram, clearly proving the way it can come down to it. When it comes down to those moments that really matters, he will step up, not just in the shorter formats, but he will do it in the longest format too, and really took his team across. The other one, of course, has to be the captain, Temba Bavuma. First of all, his record as the South African captain in Test cricket with not a single loss continues to stand resolute. And what a moment to persist and continue that record with the WTC title at that. And That's the one that really mattered. That partnership, and how Temba Bavuna, even though he only scored a half century, consumed a lot of deliveries, he was injured. He was literally batting on a single leg, and he gave that crucial hand and that supporting sister cast. He played that support cast to Aiden Markram so incredibly well to really make this a possible a reality on day 4. In fact, we're also, I would like to pause here to bring you certain responses from various members from that team. The immediate reaction, Keshav Maharaj, of course, coming here saying that it will be a stepping stone for something grand. The coach, Shukri Conrad, dedicating this to the people of South Africa, not just to the cricketers, not just to the sports persons, to the people of a country who've been starved of a historic moment ever since they made their reappearance. They got reintroduced into the fold of cricket. Kagiso Rabada says that they had to put their A game because they were up against, of course, one of the most quality sides in Test cricket today, an Australian side that hardly fails, especially when they come to that final hurdle. And they had to beat the best side here today, and they had to bring their A game, which they did. Rickleton, of course, saying that Markram's innings was the greatest he has ever witnessed. What a moment for him. What a moment for many youngsters who are going to watch this and think, we want to do that next for the country that has hardly had much to celebrate when it comes to winning titles, when it comes to crossing the line and establishing a bit of a legacy which doesn't involve having to falter always. The tag of chokers, which has finally been lifted today. Rickleton also, of course, going on to say that the pitch, there was so much of a talk around that amongst many of us here, saying that got a little better as the 4th innings went on. Nevertheless, this was a moment that they will always cherish for days to come. We are speaking of people who contributed, or those big moments that really mattered in this WTC thriller that we witnessed over the 4 days. We have to speak, of course, about the bowlers who really set this up for them. One person we have to speak first is, of course, of Kagiso Rabada. What a performance by this youngster coming into this test match under a high pressure situation with the doping controversy swirling around him. He had to go back, something that happened back in January during the SAT20 tournament. He had to go back in the middle of an IPL campaign to get some time away from the sport. He was suspended. He had to undergo that suspension. Of course, coming in here, there was a lot of pressure riding on him, especially in such a moment where you know that he is the lead pacer. He's the one who has to lead the charge. Kudos to the South African think tank, to everybody else who were really part of that unit, to have that conversation with Kagiso, to protect him, to make it evident that they were all in it together, and they backed this youngster despite what's happened and despite all the criticism and the backlash that he had been receiving ever since the news broke out of the doping controversy for which he was suspended right in the middle of IPL. What a performance by him in such a do or die, in such a high pressure finale. 9 wickets, a fifer in the first innings. And that was crucial because while a few others were probably spraying a bit, Lungi Ngiri didn't have a very good day out on day 1. His consistent line and length, his clinical bowling really made the difference in restricting Australia to 212, because you've had someone like Steve Smith, one of the most experienced batters there, someone who comes with a great pedigree and credibility, who was on 66, who was in his 60s, who was looking good to make a big one and get someone to bat alongside with him and make a difference there. And that would have been crucial. Had they gotten away with it beyond a 200 score, it would have been difficult for South Africa. The other person I'll have to mention, of course, is Lungi Ngiri. He made his comeback in that second innings, especially to dismiss 2 critical batters who actually made the difference for Australia in the first innings. One was Steve Smith, the next was Bo Webster. He got them both out pretty cheaply. So again, kudos to someone like Ngiri to come right back and make himself and his performance count. I have to also mention someone like David Bellingham, who was there right till the end in a moment that he will never forget in many years to come. Obviously hasn't had that much of an experience in Test cricket, only 12 matches old, 31 years old. What a moment for him. And that crucial, the reason why I say Bellingham is because his 45 in South Africa's first innings, though it was just a paltry total of 138 really made the difference. He was the top scorer there, but more importantly, his knock is what reduced that margin that they had to go with in the end. And that again was one of the factors that made a difference when they ended up chasing this 281 on day 4. But the one person I'll have to again come back to who really made a difference to this entire unit, the sense of calmness that you saw, except for those few moments of nervousness and panic occasionally, has to go to Shukri Conrad, the coach who took over the helm of affairs across the formats quite recently, is someone who has been very instrumental, a key figure in that dressing room to really instill that sense of calmness in everyone out there. He's the one who really, really has made a difference to the psyche. And a lot of the credit has to go to the way they performed. In fact, at the end of day 3 in that dressing room, Shukri Conrad, the first thing he says to all of his players who came back with the hopes of 79, not too far, 69 runs, not too far, said that every single person has to do the very same thing that they did on this day, the next day too, and not treat it as any other special day, to treat it as just another day as they've had done so far. Markram, of course, who's had a match-winning performance, says it was a special day winning at the home of cricket. He says it's about maximizing the balls you play. Again, something that Shukri Conrad had said, take it ball by ball. It can't be about the moment, being overwhelmed by the moment, but taking it ball by ball. And of course, Markram credits Temba Bavuma for the win, leading from the front in the last so many months, because it was another crucial moment for them. Was also that win against Pakistan, where they almost stumbled again in a run chase, won by 2 wickets. But again, it was a clinical pep talk by Shukri Conrad, and of course that confidence that they instilled amongst themselves that really made them saw this through. And so ironical that this had to happen this way, because I do remember reading about that first test match that South Africa indulged in, that they played when they got back into the fold. They were up against West Indies, chasing 201. And of course, Peter Kirsten and Kepler Wessels went back at the end of the day, 122 for 2, thinking 79 runs. This was in the bag, and it was prematurely decided, prematurely celebrated and thought of, because they crumbled. 8 wickets were lost with 25 runs against a very potent pace attack of West Indies. Again, that could have happened even today, even on this occasion, because up against them was a very, very solid bowling unit with Mitchell Starc, Pat Cummins, Nathan Lyon, and of course Josh Hazlewood. A really, really solid bowling attack that almost gave them jitters in a few moments, especially as they were counting down to the runs required. You know, I speak about the people of South Africa, all the fans who were there, and how this moment was such a monumental one for them. I have to mention this one thing that happened during day 3, especially during that key partnership that both Temba Bavuma and Aiden Markram were stitching together. And I got to know this through a friend of mine who's working with the ICC, who's at the Lords, who's possibly witnessed one of the most historic moments in Test cricket. A lot of the fans gathered there in the crowds in huge numbers were singing Shosho Loza. Now, Shosho Loza literally means to go forward and make way for the next man. Now, it goes back many, many centuries ago. It's one of the oldest renditions, Zulu songs, that was initially sung by miners who used to be carried across through steam engines. In fact, the sound Shosho Loza kind of resembles the sound that a steam engine would make. And it was to initially mean unity and resilience. But over the years, of course, especially now in contemporary South Africa, it is a symbol of hope and of solidarity. And it's used to show support for anyone or any team that is struggling. In fact, now it's more so used by supporters to set off South Africa's sporting teams to sing this to encourage the people out there, the players out there. In fact, at some point, a lot of the English fans who were gathered there, they were actually supporting South Africa, and there was so many chants and so many boos, especially when Australia was trying to review or trying to appeal. So a lot of the locals as well were really wanting a South Africa win, and that's exactly what this means to sport itself. It's not just about South Africa anymore. It's what a cricket lover truly wished for on the day But I have to also speak about what this moment means for all the cricketers who represented South Africa, who were there at the ground. You saw A.B. de Villiers watching from the sidelines there, being a part of the crowd there with his family, capturing every moment on his phone, much like what he'd done for his IPL side. Of course, he was a commentator, he was by the ropes there, but here he was a spectator and he was really soaking it all up. I'm friends with a lot of these South Africa cricketers, someone like Faf du Plessis. They were all on their social media platforms, cheering the boys on, trying to see them do something that they couldn't do for all these years. This is what this win means to them. Graham Smith being out there. You've got to mention Graham Smith because when you're looking at a captain here, Temba Bavuma, coming through and playing with injury on one leg, you've got to also go back and remember something a similar moment that Graham Smith had been a part of as captain, playing with a broken arm and trying to defy the opposition. That's exactly what this means to South Africa. The grit, the passion that comes through, and the will to overpower something that they have fought against for years. The tag of crumbling and giving in to the last moment nerves, giving into the moment and getting overwhelmed by that more than letting your skills, letting your talent and the bat and the ball drive through. I think that's what they defied today. You also have to mention a lot of the Aussies who came in there and made it very difficult for South Africa, who contributed to try and get things to swing in their favor as well. Someone like Steve Smith, how can you put him away from any contest as big as the World Test Championship final? His knock in the first innings was crucial. It was unfortunate that he was not around to be there for Pat Cummins, because he's also someone who has captained the side and done it admirably well in the past. His presence there, even as a tactician, would have been very, very critical. He injured himself in trying to catch a bit of a stinger of Temba Bavuma's bat in the initial stages of his knock. So that was a crucial moment for Australia as well. And of course, it was also crucial for Steve Smith because he had an injury. He injured his finger and had to go off. So that was a tough moment for him, but really great contribution for someone like Steve Smith in this particular match. Again, Mitchell Starc, not just with the ball, with the bat, his 58 was critical in trying to put the pressure back on South Africa, because that total was not going to be easy. It was some scintillating effort from Aiden Markram, from Temba Bavuma on day three that really made this win achievable. Nathan Lyon, how can you keep him away from any contest? He was there putting the brakes in, building the pressure for someone like his pacers to come in and throttle them, and with that sheer pace as well. And Pat Cummins with that fifer. So a lot of key moments there. Really played like defending champions, but they were up against a team, a squad, a nation, a country that really wanted to do something and prove every critic wrong. All the voices that said that their presence in the final was just easy. Their route to the final was easier compared to every other team. They had easier matches. They had easier opponents. No opponent is easy, and no moment is less significant. Is what South Africa proved there. That balcony, that Lord's balcony that has seen so many memorable moments, is what we witnessed another chapter in. And a lot of these youngsters here will remember this moment for many, many years and decades to come, because this win, their first ICC title by a senior outfit, men and women, would be something that they will cherish. It was the test format, and that's what you look at. One of the most difficult formats to shine in, difficult formats to strategize and play through, and to do that in the level in which they did, that's actually absolutely commendable. And it was these moments that made a difference. I have to also speak about one additional moment before we call this, we wrap this up. One has to be, of course, the sense of emotions that was gathering up amongst a lot of these, the members of the South Africa cricket squad itself over the last 2 days, starting from day 3, when it kind of became real that victory was almost here. You had Keshav Maharaj post day 3, when he had that small interaction with the broadcasters, almost getting emotional and choking up when he was talking about how a win, it was possible now, and how it was right there in their grasp to make come true. Someone like Ashwell Prince, the batting coach, again, what a moment that he'll have to be proud of, how his batters really came through for South Africa. Again, someone who's been a soldier himself in the fabric of South Africa's cricketing history. He was asked at the end of day three about Temba Bavuma's contribution as captain, playing through injury, and he started speaking and then he held himself back, saying, maybe I need to reserve that for the end of the match and not just yet. Of course, Temba Bavuma was the first wicket to fall at the start of day four, but his contribution was um, is already absolutely significant, and a few more runs wouldn't have mattered. His performance, his knock on day three, really made all the difference. From all of them, you had even Sean Pollock there in the commentary box. Everyone, I'm sure, would have to be choked up. You would have to really feel the emotions of this incredible win by South Africa, something that they've really struggled to get past for so many decades, including the T20 World Cup final last year, where they were almost there. 30 of 30 runs. There's only one way this result could have gone, and yet it did not. So a lot of these things, of course, sheer brilliance by India, who eventually were eventual winners in that format. But a lot of those moments had to play on your mind, especially when you're up against a quality side, a side that has one of the best players in the world, Australia. And to put all of that past them, really huge credit to this very, very inspiring and new South Africa squad, led by some very, very confident, charismatic leaders in Temba Bavuma and Shukri Conrad, that's really trying to redefine what South Africa cricket truly means. So just to wrap this up, and another reminder, it's been a historic moment here, and you'll hear more about this, of course, when Firstpost comes to you on Monday. South Africa lifting the World Test Championship title. There will be celebrations not just at Lord's, not just in England, but all through South Africa, everywhere. Everyone's going to be celebrating for many days to come. I'll, of course, take your leave here. Thanks for joining in. Be sure to tune in on Monday again.